Welcome in to another night of people, power, and politics on Detroit's only nightly political talk show, The Pulse. I'm Roop Raj. 32 days. We are closing in on a month before Election Day, and we are with you every step of the way, and yes, afterwards, when the new president gets into office, holding leaders accountable. It's what this show is all about. And so to this, the vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz featured a third star of the show. You know who that was? Someone called Civility. Not someone, but a thing. Civility coming back? Is it returning to politics after that debate? We're asking you and our all-star panel if that's the case, or if it was a one-off. Plus, new numbers show just how close the race between Vice President Harris and former President Trump really is, as well as the race for Senate. We are diving into those with pollster Steve Mitchell a little bit later. But first tonight, former President Trump back in Michigan today and speaking at a rally in Saginaw. He spoke at Saginaw Valley State, but what Trump said isn't the only thing that had people talking tonight. We're talking about this. Fisticuffs outside the venue before Trump took to the stage. This is video taken by Anna Liz Nichols, a reporter with Michigan Advance. Now, that outlet reports the people involved were vendors selling Trump memorabilia, something about some of the folks trying to get inside, some of them not being allowed in. This story still unpacking as we speak. Back inside the venue, though, the important reason that Trump was in town, he wanted to talk about a variety of topics, including your pocketbook, the economy. He said this would happen if Harris gets elected.
If you want your incomes to plummet, your net worth to collapse, your tax bills to soar, your jobs to disappear, then vote for lying Kamala to be the tax queen, to be your president, because if you want to do all those things where your country goes to hell, where your country ends up in a 1929-style depression, then vote for Kamala.
Trump also repeated this claim about the war in Ukraine, as well as the Israel-Hamas conflict.
You wouldn't have had the war in Ukraine. You wouldn't have had it anyway if I was president. If I was president, you wouldn't have had that. You wouldn't have had October 7th with Israel. Iran, as you know, was broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for Hezbollah. They had no money for anything.
All right, the campaign trail is running hot through Michigan. Tomorrow, Vice President Harris will make a stop in the Detroit area before heading north on I-75 for a rally out in Flint. That's scheduled for 3 p.m. We're in touch with the Kamala Harris camp right now to figure out exactly where she's going to be in Detroit. And next week, the former president is speaking at the Detroit Economic Club. That event will be held next Thursday. We'll have full coverage of both Trump and Harris's events right here on The Pulse. And by the way, I have personally reached out to both camps asking for a one-on-one interview on The Pulse. It's happened before, and let's hope it happens this time around as well. Speaking of the former president, prosecutors in his 2020 election interference case revealing new evidence trying to show a judge that it can move to trial in spite of the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. Stay with me here. The special counsel's office says Trump was acting as a private citizen, not as president, when he tried to overturn the results of the election. It added while he was the incumbent president, he was acting as a candidate, and his alleged co-conspirators were private citizens. It went on to say he tried to disrupt the whole process of vote collecting and counting, something the president has no official role in. The filing also says Trump told an advisor, quote, the details don't matter, when told a lawyer wouldn't be able to prove the fraud allegations. Trump's called this a weaponization of the government. But we should say again, there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 vote, despite what Trump claims. Even many Republicans who support him will admit that as well. To the other side of the ticket now, and the other side of Lake Michigan, really, something that might have been unheard of a few years ago happening in Wisconsin. A Cheney and a Democrat rallying together. Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney introducing Vice President Harris at the rally earlier tonight, as well as her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, who of course endorsed Harris for president. And Liz Cheney talked about why today.
I know that she loves our country, and I know that she will be a president for all Americans. As a conservative, as a patriot, as a mother, as someone who reveres our Constitution, I am honored to join her in this urgent cause.
Where there are so many powerful forces that have been intent on trying to demean and belittle and make people afraid. And there are many who know it is wrong, and then there are those who have the courage to speak out loudly about it, and the conviction to speak truth. And, you know, it is so admirable when anyone does it, and especially when it is difficult to do in an environment such as this. But Liz Cheney really is a leader who puts country above party and above self.
And by the way, Cheney was the top Republican on the House committee that investigated the January 6th insurrection. She lost her seat to a Trump-endorsed candidate just 2 years ago. But now we want to return to that topic we began our whole show about, talking about the running mates and their debate, J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. You saw that debate? Because a lot of you were talking about the debate. There weren't a lot of fireworks on stage. Some people going so far as to call it boring. We're so used to people fighting. But it was largely civil, and it was based, this debate was, in issues. And that got us wondering, do you think this is a sign of things to come? Are we getting more civil in this country? Are we at least moving in that direction? We always say this show is about you, and we mean it. So here now, a pulse check.
I thought it was great to watch two people have a discussion, have a debate like adults. It was wonderful to hear them not only disagree with one another, but also to agree with one another. Listen, the only way anything gets done politically is when we come together for the common good.
I think it was a return to issues. I think it was a return to a world where people running for who are competing against each other talked like they might see each other again someday, and maybe even would have to work with each other again someday. And so it was, there were differences, there were contrasts, but it was a neighborly tone like we try to do on the Pulse.
James, you're so right, and that's what we do on this show, and the show's gained a reputation for that, and we thank you for that. We also asked you the question on fox2detroit.com. If you want to weigh in, just scan that QR code right there at the bottom of your screen. You can see the results so far. Most of you say yes, it did represent a return to civility. This surprised me. If I'd guessed, I'd say people are so skeptical these days, they'd say no, it's not. But this debate really did kind of move the meter for people's moods, which was interesting. We're keeping this conversation going right after the break. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell in the studio with us, and Mayor Ethan Baker of Troy in the hot seat. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics, from the D to D.C. and in the hot seat tonight to talk about civility possibly being back in politics. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell in studio with us, and Troy Mayor Ethan Baker, a conservative, a Republican. We thank you both for being with us here today. The debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz had a lot of people talking, including on our poll, not because of fireworks, but because of moments like these.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. And I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful.
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man. I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it.
It was a fun movie to watch. Was it real life? That's what people were asking, because it seemed so out of, let's face it, character when it comes to the nature of this particular election. Congresswoman Dingell, surprising?
Well, yeah, actually, truthfully, it was surprising. And I don't want to make this sound like it's critical. You didn't know which J.D. Vance would show up. And when I first met J.D. Vance, I really liked him, and you've seen a different side of him the last few months, which, quite frankly, hasn't made me feel good, when he acknowledges that he's lying about immigrants eating dogs and cats. But it was nice to have the country witness that you could be civil, and I think somehow I would not put great hope in this being a pattern of what's going to happen the next few weeks. I think it was an off night, which I wish was an on night, and something that we will see, and we need to see a lot more of.
Is being nice a strategy, a political strategy, to try to get independent voters to like you on both ends, Ethan Baker?
It's not a bad idea. I mean, no, I don't know if it was a strategy. I think definitely this was probably the first time millions of American citizens really had a chance to listen to J.D. Vance and Governor Walz, and so J.D. Vance played it right, and the governor did too. I mean, that definitely for many people that was their first impression of those two candidates.
But Kamala Harris is a tough woman, and Donald Trump is a tough guy. And if I'm their bosses and I'm watching this and I'm running my campaign one way, and then I suddenly see them saying things like, I really feel for you and I really enjoyed this debate tonight, it almost feels like I would think Donald Trump would turn around and look at J.D. Vance and say, what were you doing here? But apparently he called and said, I hope you have a nice night with your wife. Who are these people in reality for us to kind of look at?
This is hard for me because we do respect each other. We meet, and quite frankly, we don't look at each other and say, she's a Democrat, I'm a Republican, or what do we need to do for
You're saying
Michigan?
you and Ethan Baker as a Republican mayor and as a congresswoman.
We meet and talk about what do we need to do for Michigan. And what we need to see more of is people working together to say, what do we need to do? I'm an American first. I don't think of myself as blue or red, to be perfectly frank. So that what I'm about to say sounds partisan or political, and I don't mean for it to, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I've known Tim Walz forever. He's a Midwestern nice guy, and that's one of the reasons that she picked him. And quite frankly, he was a nervous debater. You saw that nervousness last night. He was real. And
Congressman, I'm going to get in here a little bit about some of his comments about Tiananmen Square. If that was a Republican who said that they were at Tiananmen Square and then backtracked the answer and then says, I'm a knucklehead, sometimes I just say things because I talk too much. If that was a Republican soundbite, the Dems would be piling up on that guy. Do you think he got a pass?
Well, I think the Republicans are piling up on him and calling him accountable, quite frankly. So
you think that I
don't think he did get a pass. I mean, and the question got asked on a national debate on a stage, and he was nervous in answering the question. So, but I also think that J.D. Vance did come prepared to be the nice guy. He knew he had an image problem. He knew that people have been hearing a lot of these, calling women childless cat lovers is not a good thing, and I do believe he came out last night and wanted, as you say, everybody was seeing him for the first time, and people talk about it. His strategists are saying he was deliberately nice.
I find it fascinating, Ethan, when you look at the vice presidential debate, people say there was one smooth attorney and one regular guy there. J.D. Vance being the smooth attorney. You're an attorney. You know what I'm talking about. You know how to answer back. Yeah. And then people said with Kamala Harris is a smooth talking attorney. She's a prosecutor. Donald Trump is a regular guy. Are American people attuned to that, do you think, when they watch these things, or do they just feel what they feel when they watch?
I don't know. That's a good question. I was talking to somebody today in Troy who was saying, I don't think people are buying J.D. Vance being super nice. Enough of us know that he says all these things, and I think there's some truth in some of those points, but I also think that he's also a nice guy sometimes too. I really believe that. I also believe Donald Trump can be a nice guy, just like Kamala Harris, just like Tim Walz. And I know that's difficult for some people to hear, but from a civility standpoint, we have to talk and remember we're all human beings, and people have good and bad qualities, and let's try to focus on the good sometimes. But I don't know if it's lost on people watching it, or if they're really focused in on, oh, wait a minute, that's the dichotomy between the different candidates. I'm not sure they're necessarily thinking about it as hard as someone like you or me.
And I know we take a close look at it in the media and in politics, but with 30 days left until Americans go to the polls and decide on this election, do you think they thirst and crave for the kind of rapport we saw on television the other night?
I think there are some people that really like to stir up hate, fear, and division, and I think there may be outside forces, outside countries that are pouring kerosene on that. But I want to answer, I'm actually going to say something that's going to surprise you. I think all of the candidates should be allowed to be themselves and to be out there and be more ordinary and regular, because they are human beings. And I do think you're correct that I don't agree with Donald Trump, and I know how he can pit people against each other. But right now, this state is totally competitive. It's totally tied. And I do think part of that is because a lot of people see Donald Trump as a regular guy, and I think they should let Kamala Harris be the regular guy. And I think there's...
So let me ask you this then: if we know he's the regular guy and he's a politician,
he's not, by the way. He is a billionaire.
I get it. But he also
didn't know my name.
But he also, you've met him, you've talked to him, you've been in rooms with him. If he ends up becoming the president of the United States, do you think he will be different than the rally Donald Trump that we see and be more of a diplomat?
what I fear, and I'm just going to be really honest about this, is he's going to be the Donald Trump that we saw when he was president 4 years ago. We have a track record now.
But there were moments of civility in that, right?
Look, I'm the one that said, none of the Republicans said it, I'm the one that said Donald Trump's going to win this election at the end. And he was nice to me. I said I would work with him to help save the auto industry. And then he went to a rally in this state and said my husband was looking up from hell and a lot of other things. And Donald Trump has gone after me because he disagrees with the position that I've taken, and I wish he didn't know my name.
Kamala Harris, on the other hand, talks a lot about the threat to democracy and essentially saying that if Donald Trump is elected into office, our entire existence is at jeopardy. Do you think that that's equally hateful in a different way?
I think it can be, and I think it can resonate with people a certain way that is absolutely hateful and can incite something in themselves. And I'll say, I mean, I don't like to get into a lot of the partisan stuff, as you know, but I don't think the world's going to end if Donald Trump gets elected again. I think America is stronger than Donald Trump. I think it's stronger than Debbie Dingell and Ethan Baker and Ruth Raj. We're just humans, and he's just a human. So I think some of that's campaign rhetoric, and I think it's very effective. It's helped raise a lot of money. It's helped incite a lot of excitement to get people going.
And incited a lot of hate, though. I think both of these parties, and I'm going to say it, this is my opinion, I think both parties have to be a little more careful about words. Words matter, and words lead to action. And when people follow you religiously, and I use the word not by mistake, religiously, they follow Kamala Harris and Donald Trump to every word they say. That is dangerous, and that needs to change, don't you think, Congresswoman?
Look, I'm very worried about the level of vitriolicness, the anger, the potential violence that we're seeing out there. I do think we need to worry about it. And I really am going to say this. I think there are outside forces that are encouraging this. But, you know, and we got to stand up to hate wherever we see it. We have to, you know, we're seeing a rise of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and signs that are being posted, including kill your rep, not my favorite. But, I mean, we've got to stand up to it. We all, and I think you and I totally agree with this. There's too much hate out there. It's being flamed, and we must stand up to hate whenever and wherever we
have like 10 seconds left. I want to give you a final thought.
Yeah, well, I completely agree. The hate has to stop, and it's up to us to do everything we can to keep that down. And part of that is being civil with each other and encouraging civility and throughout politics.
You're seeing that happen on this set each and every night, and there's a reason that Ethan Baker, the mayor of Troy, a Republican, and Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, a Democrat, are sitting on this set, being able to actually feel differently about things, but still hold court together. And we thank you both for doing that on The Pulse tonight. Up next, a check of a different kind. We're showing you where the races between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump stand, as well as between Slotkin and Rogers. The latest poll numbers with a polling guru, Steve Mitchell. All right, back now on The Pulse, the show all about people, power, and politics. Joining us tonight to give us a pulse check on the state of two major races, pollster Steve Mitchell. He's the head of Mitchell Research and Communications, Inc., and worked for the Reagan-Bush campaign in 1984. We only have about 5 minutes, but I want to mention Steve Mitchell in 1989 was sitting in this exact studio, as we call it Studio C here at that time, TV2 Eyewitness News, talking about all the things politics. Let's talk about these latest numbers that you have from your organization here. Two-way presidential poll, Trump 49%, Harris 48%, not sure 3%. Keep the numbers up here for a moment, if you would, Adam, our talented director, so you can discuss. Are you surprised by these numbers that we're looking at right now?
Actually, I was a little surprised. I thought at this point Harris may have been ahead. And so when that happens, you sort of look through them, and I keep working the numbers, and it is what it is. But more importantly, everybody looks at that two-way, but when everybody goes to to vote, there's 8 names on that ballot, and in the 8-way ballot test, we've got that dead even at 47% to 47%.
I'm just looking at this right now, and I'm looking at this margin. When they say, when Vance and Trump, the other day, the campaign said they're going to be here every week until Election Day, one of the two, and Kamala Harris is back. I mean, when you look at 49-48, they should just set up shop here, both those camps, right?
Well, they basically have. I mean, they ought to rent apartments somewhere in Detroit area because they have to keep coming back. This is a very pivotal state. It's one of the top 7 states. It is a very close state. They all are. I mean, look at all of the 7 states, and they're within 0.5%, within 1.5%. I mean, this is the closest race in American history.
So it's the closest race in American history, you say, and we look at a 1 percentage point spread. So that is why undecided voters are so critical in this election, even if the number of undecided is small.
Yes.
Talk about that for a moment.
Yes. And last time, when we did the poll on September 11th, it looked as though all of our undecideds were Republicans. This time, not so much. I think those Republicans have either decided that they're not going to vote for him or they are. Now we had a more balanced group of both Republicans and Democrats in that undecided group. And it is a very narrow group. They're going to make the difference between who's going to win Michigan and who isn't going to win Michigan.
So there's perception and there's polling, which is more accurate than perception. Perception says that Kamala Harris stepping into the shoes of the candidate for the Democratic nominee was the best darn thing the DNC could have done.
Oh, it was.
And is that polling, the polling numbers show that, right? Where would Biden have been, do you suppose, if he was competing at this stage in the race?
Biden would be down 5 points at this point.
Yeah.
It would be over. It would be over, and the Democrats would be in deep trouble.
And now they're not. And now it's anyone's game, so to speak. Let's talk about the next full screen here that we have, which is a look at the Michigan News source poll. 709 likely voters saying Elissa Slotkin would win right now, 49%. Mike Rogers, 44%. Unsure, 7%. So this race looks a little bit different. Talk about this one.
It is different. It's funny. It's because of the gender gap. There's a slight gender gap in the presidential campaign, about a 5-point difference between women voting for Harris and men voting for Trump. But here we've got an 11-point gap that Slotkin's winning with women, as opposed to Rogers only winning by 1 point with men, and that's what's making the difference in this campaign as opposed to the presidential campaign.
So what do you suppose happens here? Some people would say, wouldn't the Senate race almost mirror the presidential race? But not the case.
Well, it would, but she's had such a financial advantage over him. He just got $30 million more, but she got more money. So we're just going to see more and more money pumped into TV stations, which is a good thing. And that race, I think, is going to tighten up as well. And Rogers could win that one. We just don't know. These are all going to be incredibly close races at the end of the day.
30 days or so left, so 30 days and some change, basically a month left. And as we take a look at this next month, what are the biggest mistakes that Harris and Trump can make as we speak?
You never know what kind of mistakes they can make. I think that one of the biggest mistakes that Hillary Clinton made back in 2016 was ignoring Wisconsin. They all know that,
she ignored Michigan,
and
too.
Michigan. But I think that you're going to see, they're just going to go from Arizona to Nevada to Wisconsin to Michigan to Pennsylvania to Georgia to North Carolina and back again, back and back and back. And then we'll see what happens. But every one of these states incredibly close. It is an election in which no one can tell you who's going to win at this point.
The only person who can are the people who are voting on the other side of that camera, and that's the way this great country works. Whether you like the candidates or not, you got a choice here, and you have to make that. You know what? If they donned a Tigers cap, both of those, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and they showed up next Wednesday for the big game, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
That would be pretty good. You got to wear those Tiger caps.
Yeah, you better wear the Tigers cap if you want to win Detroit, win Michigan. It's so good to see you. Always, Steve Mitchell, we thank you for your perspective.
And thank you for having me on, Roop. I appreciate it.
We're going to have you on again. We thank you. That is the Pulse for tonight. Battleground with SC Cup is next. I'm Roop Raj. We'll see you tomorrow night.